Hello and welcome to the Regional Emergency Preparedness Town Hall. Okay, stand by. Waiting for YouTube to engage. Hello and welcome to the Regional Emergency Preparedness Town Hall hosted by RDOS Communications and RDOS Protective Services. My name is Eric Thompson. I am the Communications Manager of Engagement here, Manager of Engagement and Communications at the RDOS. We have a number of guests who will be joining us, and this meeting is taking place at the RDOS office in the syilx Okanagan community of St. Pinkton in the city of Penticton. And we would like to thank you very much for taking the time to join us. We have a number of local elected officials who will be with us online. We have our chair, Mark Pendergraft, here in person. We'll hear from him in just a moment. We also have some regional emergency professionals on the line as well and here in person, and journalists, producers, local media, and everyone else who is joining us. So thank you for taking the time. The RDOS is hosting this town hall event now while the Emergency Operations Center is not active in this area, and we're hoping that will continue to be the case. Just ahead, we'll confirm where you can get timely and accurate information from official sources, but of course reminding you that you can always check with local media, but often during an emergency, information is flowing fast and furious, and it's important to know which official links you can find to get that information. And we'll provide information about how you can prepare yourself and your family now, the steps that you can take. But first, a few opening remarks from Mark Pendergraft. Mark is the chair of the RDOS Board of Directors.
Hey, thank you, Eric. I'd just like to thank everybody for attending, and in particular, the staff that are here. Giving this information in advance of these emergencies is really important. So the better prepared we are, the smoother things go. So I'll just turn it right back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And in just a moment, I'll give you a quick list of who is joining us today. We, as I mentioned, we have some elected officials who are online as well as partners and media. And there will be a Q&A, a question and answer session coming up shortly. If you're watching the recorded version of this meeting, you can certainly send an email or make a phone call to get details. We'll have that information for you shortly. But I'll tell you right now, the email address is communications@rdos.bc.ca. So if you are watching live and you have a question, I have the email up here. We'll certainly do our best to get that question to the professionals here. Again, that's communications with an S at rdos.bc.ca. Now, we have just a couple of quick slides for you. This is the overview. If you watch no other part of this meeting other than the first couple of minutes, we're hoping there are a few takeaways that could be helpful for you. And it's important to note that providing information during a wildfire is one of the many responsibilities that emergency programs take on. It's important that all partners, including residents, visitors, and the media, know where and when they can find the latest updates. And one of the first steps you can take is to familiarize yourself with your local emergency program website. We could be, of course, we're welcoming anyone to watch this, and on YouTube it could be anyone from around the world, but certainly within the region, if you don't know where your information is about your local emergency program, now is a good time to familiarize yourself. In the South Okanagan and Similkameen, you can find the Regional Emergency Operations Center or the RDOS Emergency Operations Center website at emergency.rdos.bc.ca. You'll find resource links, tips, and information there. Another important part of familiarizing yourself with local emergency preparedness is to know what an evacuation alert and an order might look like and what the current status of those might be. And there is an interactive map on the Emergency Operations Center website that shows you that. On the next slide, I want to mention BC Wildfire Service. The official source for information about the current wildfire situation in the province comes from the BC Wildfire Service, BCWildfire.ca. The website and app both have been improved. They have improved features and functionality. Nicole Bonnett from BC Wildfire Service will join us in just a few moments. I know that BC Wildfire, right across the province, has been very busy with training activities and educational opportunities, taking those opportunities now. So they are working flat out, and Nicole has agreed to join us for a few minutes here during this program. Notification systems are another very important part of emergencies. In the regional district, Voyent Alert is the notification system. You can get routine notifications, but more importantly, you can receive critical notifications via email, text, or telephone. The key with Voyent Alert, though, is to sign up early, register, and then understand how to use the service. You can use it through the website. You can download the app, and then if an incident happens, you'll be notified. Now, not everybody has technology, and certainly some people might be watching this on their phone, but for some, and if you know family or friends who are in that situation, they may only have the opportunity to have a phone call come through in the event of an emergency, and that is part of what Voyent Alert can be useful for. It literally could be a phone call coming in on a landline with a message that you need to be aware of a situation in your area. So if you haven't yet, please do register for Voyent Alert, and that's again for the regional district of Okanagan Similkameen. Some of the neighboring regional districts and municipalities are using that service as well, but there are other services, and make sure you familiarize yourself with that and check your account too so that it is up to date. Let's move on to getting prepared now, and just before we hear from Nicole Bonnett and the other professionals, now is a really good time to take the steps to keep you and your family safe. You can get more information about emergency preparedness and recovery online at preparedbc.ca. That's preparedbc.ca. There are a few key steps you need to be aware of. Knowing the hazards. Many of us know that wildfires hit a variety of regions around the province and can even hit when you're not expecting them. But there are other hazards and emergencies that can impact your family. So knowing what those hazards are is important. And building a kit. A grab-and-go kit is something that you can have at home. You can have one in your vehicle. You can have one at your office. And the example which Brittany Seibert, who is with us here today, may talk about as well, is you could be at work and a wildfire hits your home and you're not able to get back to your home. What happens then? Do you have a grab-and-go kit? Do you have a plan in place for your family and your pets? So having a kit, having a plan, and knowing what that plan is and exercising it, just making sure all the members of your family are aware of it. And another reminder, too, is to monitor official sources, including local media during wildfires. Emergency management relies heavily on local media to get information out, but it's also important to check with the local official sources like the regional district or municipalities. Now, we know it is dry out there, and certainly we have had a little bit of rain in the last little while, not enough to mitigate wildfire risk. So the key is to take steps now to prepare your family and your property and be proactive about your own safety. Having a plan in place takes away the stress when an evacuation alert or order is issued. Now, FireSmart. We've had a lot of questions. I've had a lot of questions from people about grants that are available and programs and that type of thing. And certainly you can always get information about FireSmart and what's available. But one of the key things to do right now is to familiarize yourself with what FireSmart means for your property, the steps you can take today. And Brittany Seibert is here right now from RDOS Emergency Services. She's the RDOS Emergency Services Manager. Brittany, let's talk a little bit about FireSmart. Now, we know that things like gutters can be a problem during a wildfire. They can attract the flames to our house, and some of the other things we should keep in mind about our property and being prepared.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we have to understand is that ember cast is probably the number one ignition source when we see homes that are lost during wildfires. And so we need to look at what is around our homes that can be a catchment or could ignite from an ember. So we do recommend that what people can do in for immediate steps that they can do to reduce their impact or vulnerability to wildfire is to look at the cleanliness of their roofs, cleanliness of their gutters, look at the vegetation that is around your home. So we want to be harboring plants that are more fire resilient, so looking for more of our broadleaf and leafy type greens versus our conifer type vegetation.
Okay, and I'm going to ask Danny Francisco, who is operating behind the scenes here, if he can take the slideshow down so we can see Brittany. And I'll remind you again that Brittany Seibert is the RDOS Emergency Services Manager. And Brittany, one thing that's come up recently is last year, 2023, during the wildfire season, there were some residents who were on evacuation order who had set up sprinkler systems and then left the water running and left their property. We understand that can be a real concern because it can deplete the water that's available to fight the fires.
Yeah, so there's two concerns there, particularly because we will try to do our evacuations in a strategic manner, which means that we're asking people to leave in advance of the fire entering into their area. If you leave the water on, there is that concern that we could be tapping out the local water sources that could be utilized for fire suppression efforts, but also that there is a potential for water damage for homes. And so what we're asking for residents to do is if you do have sprinklers on your home and you are part of a strategic evacuation, to just leave the water off. And when firefighters come into the area, they will be able to assess your home properly and ensure that, first of all, that your sprinklers are in adequate positions, but then also turning on the water at the appropriate time.
And it's important to point out, you don't turn the water off at the source. It's just turning the water off that might be coming out of the hose or out of your sprinkler.
Correct.
Okay. Let's talk for a moment about evacuation alerts and orders. That can be frightening for someone if they're on an evacuation alert. Many people who haven't experienced it might not understand what that means. What is an evacuation alert?
So an alert is an opportunity for us to notify residents that there is a hazard in the area. There is a potential for it to grow into a situation in which we may issue an order. And this is always due to the safety for residents. So during an alert, we highly recommend people take that time to establish their emergency plan if they haven't, ensuring that they have their grab and go bag, taking any necessary steps to ensure the safety and well-being of their family and household, so that if they do have to leave, that they're prepared to go. And this can look like including your livestock or animals as well into those decisions.
An order, a little more serious, and it could be issued in the form of a document, or it could literally be a knock at the door from RCMP or search and rescue, possibly support from local fire departments as well. What does an order look like?
So an order means that you are at threat and that the hazard has grown into an immediate safety issue for residents. So we are asking you to leave the area so that we are able to maintain a safety for our residents, but also to allow responders to then work into the area and deal with the hazard itself.
Now, we can certainly talk throughout this program a bit more, which we will, and we'll invite Nicole Bonnett to come into that conversation as well. But we saw in 2023, there were situations where homes were under an evacuation order, but people didn't want to leave their property. One of the reasons they didn't want to leave was for the security of their property. Can you talk a bit about that part of an evacuation order?
Yeah, so again, we are issuing the order because of safety and concerns for our residents. And so the reason we are asking you is to leave is for the well-being and safety of you and your household. In the sense of security, there may be a potential that people don't understand is that once we've issued an evacuation order, we actually are taking on the responsibility of securing that site. And so we do take the necessary steps to ensure the security of the neighborhoods and the communities while under evacuation alert orders. That includes hiring security organizations to manage checkpoints, working with our CMP. Sometimes we work with our bylaw officers as well. So we're trying to ensure that while people are away from their homes, that we are also taking necessary steps for the security of their home and property.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brittany. I want to acknowledge as well who else we have here. We do have a few elected officials joining us. We'd like to thank them very much. I know we have Mayor Sue McCordaw from Osoyoos, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have the chair of the Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen, Mark Pendergraft. I see there we have Matt Taylor, who is the Area D Director, and any others who I may have missed. In just a moment, I see Nicole Bonnett is now here. So we're going to go to Nicole Bonnett, and then we will hear from Dawn Russell. Dawn Russell is with Okanagan Nation Alliance. She's involved in emergency management. She's the coordinator. And also, I guess we'll call you a partner friend of the Regional District Emergency Program, because we've worked with Dawn in many facets in the past, and we'll talk to her in a moment. We also have Shane Houlihan. Shane is the Emergency Program Coordinator for the RDOS, and Gilbert Chan is here as well. Gilbert is a new Emergency Program Coordinator, joins us from just east of here. Here to monitor and listen in today. And Greg Kanya is the Senior Manager of Emergency Services for the RDOS in an acting role, but providing a lot of great expertise as well. Nicole Bonnett is with BC Wildfire Service, and we've spoken to her on the EOC updates in the past, the emergency program, the Emergency Operations Center updates that we've had during wildfires. And a little nicer to see you here, Nicole, now when it's not so busy. I know you're involved in a lot of training. Can you give us just a sense of what's happening now behind the scenes for BC wildfire personnel like yourselves to get local governments prepared?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on this spring and that have been going on sort of over the course of the winter. A lot of work going in behind the scenes on the Premier's task force, and then just looking to do a lot of those kind of spring preparedness, spring readiness conversations with local governments across the province, for me in particular, the ones within the Kamloops Fire Centre region. And those are typically also done in conjunction with the emergency management and climate readiness, so that everybody is kind of up to speed on any changes that have been made at that local government level over the winter, at BC Wildfire Service over the winter, and at EMCR over the winter.
We have some media joining us. We have media here in person, but if there are any questions, certainly we'll open up the floor to questions from the media. In the meantime, we do have a question here from Joe Fries. General sense of how things look and what kind of wildfire season might be ahead. Can you give us that, the prognosis from what you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, so obviously we're seeing a little bit of activity up in the north part of the province right now, but really what we're still watching for is to see what happens with the May and June weather. Anytime we can get a reasonable amount of precipitation during May and June months, it can really set us up to look a little bit more successful, just as far as like the potential for fire starts once we move more into the summer sort of season as things dry out. But we are carrying a little bit of that compounding drought over the last couple of years. So there still is quite a bit of potential out there. People see that at the end of this week here, we do have the Category 3 open burning prohibition coming into effect around noon. So we are starting to take some of those additional precautionary measures to prevent the potential for additional human-caused fire starts.
And Nicole, if I may, I'm just looking at the screen here of all our participants, and I neglected to mention the CAO of the RDOS, Jim Zaffino, who's here as well, and he's going to provide a few thoughts at the end of the meeting. So another question then from Joe Fries. He's wondering if there are any BC Wildfire Service personnel in the region, and are there any new community wildfire teams that you can talk about?
When you say new BC wildfire personnel in the region, I guess just looking for maybe
I don't think I think he's talking not new in that case. It's just BC Wildfire Service personnel in the region. I know there's the Penticton unit that's here throughout the year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so for the regional district of the Okanagan Similkameen, we do have the Penticton Fire Zone, aptly named, based out of Penticton here out by the airport. So there's a contingent of wildfire officer staff and then initial attack crews that are based out of the Penticton specific location. And then as you move north, there's the base in Vernon, and moving, I guess, towards the west, at least just sticking within the Kamloops Fire Centre geographic. There's a unit crew that's based out of Princeton, and then the Merritt Zone. So those are kind of the two zones within the Fire Centre region that kind of back on to the Penticton area here. And then we also have some contracts in place with some of our First Nations partners as far as some response crews and community liaisons and heavy equipment opportunities and things like that.
During a wildfire, BC Wildfire is the lead agency, and often there are questions around updated information. I know the website for BC Wildfire Service and the app have both been improved, and there are some great features on there. One of them is the reporting feature. Can you talk a bit about that? I understand you can take a photo and send it in, and it will geotag the location, so people don't have to try to figure out exactly where it is if they want to report that fire. Is that correct?
Yeah, so one of the great things that the app does is you can now, if you didn't want to make the phone call, which would be star 5555 on a cell phone, and get a person, you can report through the app. So it'll take you through a whole sort of step-by-step process of the information required, but it does let you take a photo. That photo is geo-referenced, so we can see where you're standing and the direction that you're looking when you take the photo, which is really great if you're in an area that you're not familiar in. You know, the Okanagan is no stranger to a lot of tourism in the summer. That is a big part of sort of the local economy. So for anybody who's coming through the area that's like not super familiar with the geographics or, you know, cardinal direction, those photos are hugely helpful in when they come into our ops team to make the decision about where they're going to deploy resources and how resources get allocated, because they'll be able to tell if you as a member of the public aren't super confident in what you're seeing, like smoke activity wise, smoke color wise, those pictures really help them make a determination as to what's going on the ground in that photo. The other big thing about the app, which is really helpful now, is that if you are out in the backcountry or somewhere where you don't have cell phone service, but you think you're seeing a wildfire, you can still put it into the app through the report a fire function. It won't send right away, but as soon as you enter in back into cell phone service, it will push that report through for you. You don't have to go back into the app to resubmit it.
All right, we won't keep you long. I know you are in the middle of some training right now. Let's wrap up with information. During a wildfire, when people are looking for information, they go to BCWildfire.ca. There's a whole bunch of different information people are looking for. And sometimes there's a, we won't call it a lag. It takes time to get the information up there because it has to be verified. What type of information should people expect when there's a wildfire in an area that they are interested in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We've done a lot of work from 2022 into 2023. So last season, anybody who'd been looking at our website would have seen a big change around how we're sharing information or our ability to share information on incidents throughout the province. So when you're looking at what we're calling the wildfire news dashboard, it'll look like a map of the province, and there'll be little icons that indicate where each fire is and what the status of that fire is. Is it out of control, being held under control? Is it a fire of note? And then you can click on that little icon and you'll get a little pop-up box. And that pop-up box will give you some like quick overview, highlights the name of the fire if there is one, the size, the general location. And then you'll see a little box that's, I think should be navy in color for most people's screens. It'll say view incident details or full incident details. And if you click on that, it'll take you to an independent page that is dedicated to that incident. And depending on sort of the scope and scale of response occurring on that incident, there might be maps, there might be photos, there might be video, the number of resources, what the weather is looking like, where the crews are working, fire size, status, all of those things. And there'll also at the very top, there'll be a phone number and an email address so that if you have questions about that incident, or if you have a question that you don't see answered on that site, you can give a phone call to that number and you'll get a person, whether it's myself or somebody else in my team at the Kamloops Fire Center or in one of our other teams in another fire center, and they'll be able to answer any of your questions. I think the important thing for people to note is some of those pages won't have a full like built out list of where crews are working and what activities are going on. The sort of more complex details will be still for the fire of note pages. If there's, let's say 27 new fire starts, because there's a big lightning storm that's potentially moved through an area, it would be really hard to, get all of that information into all of those individual incident pages, like in a very short window when people start having questions. So I just want to really stress that if people are seeing something or not seeing what they think they're looking for, give us a call at the fire center and we'll be happy to answer those questions. That's what we're there for. And if you're not super comfortable navigating through the website and you've got questions, you can also give us a call at the fire center and we'll walk you through sort of click by click how to find the information that you're looking for, so that you feel a little bit more prepared to do that when fires start and if there happens to be a fire near your home.
And to clarify, when there is a wildfire, BC Wildfire is a lead agency on the wildfire itself. Evacuation alerts and orders and emergency support services falls to the local government.
Yeah, that's correct. And then so for anybody that's looking, if you are in a community that does have an evacuation alert or order on it, that shows up on our map, but it does pull from the Emergency Info BC map. So until that information has been input there, it won't show up on the BC Wildfire Service map.
I've got to ask you this last question before we let you go, because it has come up before from media and the public, and an incident or a situation that arose last year, 2023, with wildfires was community members who wanted to get training to be able to provide some level of support during a wildfire response. Can you talk at all about where that's at or what people need to know about that situation?
Yeah, so we have a couple of sort of different avenues for that. If you're interested, not so much from like the, community association response side of things, but maybe you've got heavy equipment as an example. I would say reach out now to your local zone. So depending on which fire center you're in, or if you fall within Penticton or Merritt or the Vernon zone, just in this particular conversation here, reach out to that zone and have the conversation now. If you get your equipment signed up and it goes through the safety inspection and all of those pieces to make sure it's fire ready, doesn't mean you have to go out on a fire when you're called. But in the event that you decide you would like to participate in the fire, we're ready at the same time that you're ready. You can decline the offer if we were to call you and say like, hey, do you want to deploy out to this fire? But if we can sort of do that pre-planning and that pre-org, we're all better set up to sort of integrate into response to that. From the sort of more holistic community group side of things, we are working quite closely with the Fraser Basin Council. And so there's a number of groups that have been predetermined through the work that the Fraser Basin Council has done. And they'll be going into some training, I believe, in June. And then moving forward from there, we'll have that list of community associations. There is a whole list of sort of like prereqs that need to be met in order to be eligible for that for this summer. But if you've got further questions and it's something that you're interested in, you have a community group or association that's official and registered, then you can reach out either to myself at the fire center or to your local zone and have that conversation as well.
And of course, final reminder about drone usage. Do not use drones during a wildfire. It can impede air traffic and, in fact, stop the wildfire response. Same with watercraft. When they're needing to pick up water off the lakes around the area, you should definitely avoid that. Unless there's anything you want to mention on that, we will let you go because, again, I know you're in the middle of training, but we really appreciate you taking the time, Nicole. And your title, your official title with BC Wildfire Service?
My year-round job is the community engagement specialist. In fire season, you'll often find me as the fire information officer, both for the fire center and for the IMT. And if I could just tag onto that plug for the drone use, it is, it puts the people that are in the aircraft at risk. So we're not looking to compromise anybody's safety. And if we can't determine that a drone has cleared the area, we do have to ground the aircraft for like a minimum of 45 minutes. So either until it's been 45 minutes since the last sighting or until we can confirm that it's landed. So that really can sort of impede that operational response. And if you're caught, it does come with a fine. So we just really ask that people keep their personal drones clear of fire areas so that we're not putting lives at risk and impacting operations.
Nicole, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks.
That's Nicole Bonnett with the BC Wildfire Service and joining us, I believe, from Kamloops today. Dawn Russell is here at the RDOS, and she is an emergency management coordinator with Okanagan Nation Alliance. Dawn, did I get your title right? Is that correct?
You sure did, Eric.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you very much.
And we've asked Dawn to come to provide some information from the syilx Okanagan communities in general. We have invited different representatives to join us, but in the event that they weren't able to, we thought we'd ask you if you can give us a few thoughts. And first of all, I think during a wildfire, we have multiple levels of local governments and we have communities. What can you tell us about getting information if you're living in one of the syilx Okanagan communities?
So there's different avenues that you can take based on where you're located. In the South Okanagan, the syilx ONA communities like to provide the evacuation and fire information to the RDOS to echo on their sites, because a lot of the communication that we're utilizing is through our own internal channels, whether that's a phone tree or a Facebook page. We like to make sure that the local government, the RDOS, has the information that we're providing out to our members, and then they're able to act accordingly based on the information that's posted either on the RDOS or the local independent Facebook group, or I think there's a couple of communities also in the South Okanagan who have Voyent Alert. And so it's just a matter of check marking what areas you want to be informed or notified about.
On occasion in previous years, the RDOS has posted alerts and orders and states a local emergency on the RDOS website as a backup so that if someone's unable to find it through one of the communities, they can then find it through the RDOS website, and that's certainly a standing invitation as well. What are you working on through the Okanagan Nation Alliance as we look to this season? We've heard before wildfire season isn't really a season, it's technically year-round, but what types of activities are you undertaking to make sure that people are safe?
So this is the really excellent part about our multi-jurisdictional relationship with both BC Wildfire and our local governments, because our natural resource guardians, as well as our territorial stewardship division entities, work in conjunction and partnership on cultural burning and prescribed wildfire or prescribed fires, so that we're removing forest fuels and we're managing the way that the forests are growing so that ungulates and wildlife have the opportunity to have an enhanced life instead of being choked out by mismanaged forests. So it helps reduce the wildfire risk for people in the area. So early spring, late fall, you'll see smoke in the hillsides. That's usually our cultural burning practices in place. And we're just doing our duty to take care of the land.
Part of this town hall was to share information about where people can find information and how they can get prepared. Working with communities that you're involved with, communication can be difficult at the best of times. What would you say what steps should people be taking now if you live within one of the syilx Okanagan communities to make sure you know where you'll find information and how you'll be notified if an incident is happening in your area?
That's a great question. There's website information for each of the bands within the Okanagan Nation Alliance, and through there you can either contact the office directly or you can look through their pages to see what their emergency process and protocols are for notification. So there's usually some indication that they signed up for Voyent Alert and that you can follow these links to get notified in the future.
Okay, we are going to, in just a moment, go to Shane Houlihan with the RDOS. And before we do that, I'm going to open the floor to you if there's anything else you want to add that we haven't talked about.
Exactly. So we have a lot of water courses and water sources within the Okanagan Nation territory. Not all of them are, hey, let's go dip our feet in the water here, or let's drop a helicopter bucket into the water here, because we are trying to protect salmon habitat. So we have shoreline and we have areas that we like to protect and enhance for the future of fish species in our area. And so if we're not pulling from a specific location and you wonder, why aren't they dipping water right over here? It's because we're trying to protect that specific water source. And our traditional ecological knowledge keepers work under contract with the BC Wildfire Service. So there's usually a very close relationship when it comes to protecting cultural spaces and protecting sensitive ecosystems within our territory.
Dawn, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah.
That's Dawn Russell. She is with Okanagan Nation Alliance. She is the Emergency Management Coordinator. And just before we go to Shane, I'm going to put Jim Zaffino on the spot for just a moment. He's the RDOS Chief Administrative Officer. We have an emergency operations center here that serves the region. Can you talk a bit about what plan you're working on right now to make it more of a regional service?
Yes, thank you, Eric. So we are calling it a regional service right now, but it's actually a regional district service, where it's a regional district staff that are staffing the EOC along with some volunteers from municipalities. What the regional district is doing now is looking at having a true regional EOC. And one of the models that we're using is one region working together. And when I say region, we're talking about all 11 governments within the RDOS. With that, we would have support, mutual support from all the 11, where one area can't help another, we would then step in, or they would step in and help us. So that's something new for the EOC.
And the benefit of having a regional EOC or Emergency Operations Center is that you're taking all of the available resources and the knowledge and experience and working together instead of working individually.
That is the main goal. Also, there'll be continuity within government, because right now there probably is about 30 to 35 regional district staff that work in the EOC, which means that the day-to-day work, the core work, it suffers. And if we help each other, the continuity in the EOC would be successful. Any successful EOC means continuity in government.
Excellent. Jim, thank you so much. That's Jim Zaffino, Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen Chief Administrative Officer, and we'll have time at the end, Jim, if you want to add anything else before we go. Same with Chair Mark Pendergraft. Shane Houlihan is new to the RDOS as of a couple of months. He is an emergency program coordinator. And on preparedness, Shane, let's talk for just a moment about emergency plans. If we were to create an emergency plan for our family, what would that look like in your opinion?
What I'd recommend everybody do is go to preparedbc.ca. You mentioned it earlier. Prepared BC is a great resource. They've got guidance on how to build out a plan, how to prepare your family. They've also got templates that you can follow, so you don't have to come up with every eventuality yourself. We're, standing on the shoulders of giants here and learning from one another. They've got a great, robust template that you and your family can follow to map out your emergency plan.
Well said. And a grab-and-go bag is exactly what it sounds like, things in there that you might need in the event of an emergency, and especially if you're out of your home for a while.
Yes, yeah. A grab-and-go bag is a kit that should make sure that your family are safe, secure, relatively comfortable for the first 72 hours after an emergency or during an evacuation. It's got some core components in it. You can buy them off the shelf online. They're a little bit price prohibitive for some families. What I did is I made my own. Again, Prepared BC have some guidance on how to make your own. What I'd recommend is go online, look at the list, but don't get overwhelmed. If you get overwhelmed, you might procrastinate on it. You might put it aside for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's too late. What I'd say is start with some small things tonight. Get an old rucksack that's been sitting in the bottom of some closet. Put in a spare change of clothes for everybody in the family. Think of the pets, a bit of kibble for the dog, an extra leash. Whether it's a dog, a goldfish, or a horse that your household has, make sure to consider them in your planning. As well as that, photograph, scan all your important documents, your insurance documents. Email a copy to everybody in the family, but then print some hard copies to keep in your grab-and-go bag. And what I'd recommend as well is make a family affair of it. Sit around the table, include the kids in the planning. Ask each of them to include maybe one special thing that they can add in their grab-and-go bag. It might be a coloring book to keep them amused in a reception center. It might be a teddy bear to help them sleep in an uncomfortable and stressful environment. But it'll build good habits and emergency preparedness in the family as well.
Well said. That's great. We should record that. The other part of an emergency, which is very serious, is emergency support services, dedicated, trained volunteers who step in to help people in a time of need. If your family is under an evacuation order and you have to leave, it can be very stressful. Emergency support services provides that level of support to help people through a very difficult time. But it's important that people make plans now that if they have to leave the area, maybe they have a family relative or friend that they can stay with in the event that they're out of their house or worse happens.
Correct, yeah. Everybody should have 2 out-of-town contacts. One who's maybe a little bit close by. It's not going to be an 8-hour drive to get to them, but they're likely not affected by the same emergency. Then somebody a little bit further away. If you're sitting here in Penticton, maybe it's someone on the coast, maybe it's someone in Alberta, that they're more than likely not going to be affected by the same emergency. Make sure that they understand that they're in your emergency plan and that they can either house or support your family however is needed. And that includes the animals. Make sure that you mention that you'd be bringing a dog with you, and you can ensure that that's suitable to their family. And then when they've agreed to be in your plan, share their contact details and their address with everybody in your family. And again, make sure to print some paper copies of that. So if your phones do go dead, you can still get in touch with your out-of-town contact.
Shane, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. That's Shane Houlihan, and a reminder to, if there's any media watching who are looking for the names and spellings of our guests, it's in the YouTube description box. That's Shane Houlihan, RDOS Emergency Program Coordinator. And I want to go back to Brittany Seibert for just a moment, RDOS Manager of Emergency Services, on preparing for the potential that you are on evacuation order and you need to access emergency support services. You can register now with your BC Services card. Make sure your BC Services card is prepared so that you can use it for ESS supports. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, that's correct. So through the BC Services app, you can actually pre-register yourself, and part of this is just a way to verify that you are who you are. And so then when you do come to a reception center, it can expedite the process for us to get you registered for your ESS supports, as well as give us the opportunity to actually do e-transfers rather than vouchers, which gives you a little bit more flexibility as to how you want to utilize the ESS support that it best suits your family.
Also, we heard from Animal Lifeline emergency response team Alert. I reached out to them earlier to get some feedback, and they did mention that it is your responsibility to have an emergency plan in place for pets and animals, as Shane mentioned, and a grab-and-go kit for your animals as well. And you should discuss that plan with your family. Very important that they know what the plan is for your pets, especially if you have a number of them. And Alert recommends keeping your vet records, your veterinarian records, on a USB flash drive, and consider taking photos of medications and required pet food, and of course keeping that with you as opposed to leaving it at home. Quick note about Ministry of Agriculture. They have what's called Premises ID for those people who are involved in farming. They likely have heard about this, but it's a way of linking poultry and livestock, including bees, to specific geographic locations. Premises ID information includes contact information to inform planning and responses to animal disease events or natural disaster or emergencies like fires or floods. And with that, I don't see any questions coming in from the media. I will open the floor up before we go to our closing slide to see if any of our other guests here at the Regional District have any other comments that they'd like to share with us. Don't be shy and certainly raise your hand if you do. I don't see any just yet. I see Shane Houlihan.
Yeah, just one note that once you've made your emergency plan and you have your household spoken for, radiate out, think of your neighbors. If you have 4 seats or 5 seats in the car and 4 in your household, think maybe there's someone down the road, an elderly person who may not have a vehicle of their own, may not be comfortable driving under stressful conditions, or might be able to keep the kids amused while you're on the long road to safety and security. So think who around you might benefit and who you might be able to collaborate with in your planning as well.
All right. This guy's great. Greg Kanya. Greg is the Senior Manager of Protective Services here at the RDOS.
I'd just like to add one item to your emergency kit, your grab-and-go kit. Now, often, if the worst happens and you lose your home in a wildfire, when you're dealing with insurance after the fact, many people don't know what is in their home. So it's worthwhile to take a little walk around your house with your smartphone and just videotape everything in your house, just to get an idea of what you have, because during those conditions, you might never figure out what you've lost.
Excellent point. Very good for art, especially if you have paintings, family heirlooms, equipment, that type of thing. And Brittany, you had mentioned this before we started today, that knowing what your insurance includes or doesn't include, now is the time to look at that so that you're not surprised in the event of a fire.
Yeah, it will just help you with dealing with the stress of dealing with an insurance company and the potential impacts of the emergency that it has had on you and your family. Often when we have a hazard in the area, such as a wildfire, you're unable to change your insurance policy. So please, I would highly recommend that you take the time, check with your insurance person, what is your policy, understand how to activate it, understand what you're covered for, understand what your deductible is, and make any appropriate changes now before we have a hazard impeding upon our communities.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. I really do appreciate you coming in today, and I'm going to ask Danny Francisco behind the scenes here if he can bring up our closing slide. We would like to thank everyone for taking time for watching as well to learn more about how you can get prepared for an emergency before it happens. And thanks again to our panelists for sharing their expertise. Please take time now to familiarize yourself with official information sources, including emergency program websites and social media channels. Be aware that during an emergency, information is flowing fast. And if you're receiving information through social media or through family or friends and you want to verify it, don't hesitate to contact your local government. In this case, for the regional district, it's the RDOS Emergency Operations Center. You can check the website or you can call to clarify that information. And if you do get a voicemail, if it's after hours, every effort will be made to get back to you as quickly as possible, make sure the information is available on the website. During an incident such as a wildfire, the RDOS aims to get information out at 10 in the morning with a major update usually through an information release, and then the video updates at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's the goal. It's not always possible, but remember that any new information, once verified, will be posted on the official channels as soon as it is verified and if conditions change. If you're not hearing much, there's a very good chance that nothing has changed, but I appreciate if you're on an evacuation order, that's not comforting, so don't hesitate to phone, and again, just familiarize yourself with those channels. And that slide that we had up earlier had the information, both the phone number and the website. Phone number 250-490-4225. That's 490-4225. That'll get you through to the Emergency Operations Center at the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, and the Emergency Operations Center website, emergency.rdos.bc.ca. We're going to wrap it up here. Final word, Jim Zaffino, if you wanted to jump in. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
Just to assure everyone that your Emergency Operations Center, the equipment's fully operational. We have a rapid response team when and if needed, and they're fully trained. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all very much for joining us. Again, you'll find information, links, and resource tips on the Emergency Operations Center website. If you are watching from outside of the region, don't hesitate to check with your local government and find out what you need to know now. Thanks again for joining us. We do appreciate your time.